As part of the orchestrated plan, we allege that 16 Michigan residents met covertly in the basement of Michigan GOP headquarters and knowingly and of their own volition signed their names to multiple certificates stating that they were the duly elected and qualified electors for President and Vice President of the United States of America for the state of Michigan. That was a lie. They weren't the duly elected and qualified electors, and each of the defendants knew it.
Michigan State Attorney General Dana Nessel has announced that 16 fake electors in Michigan who signed certificates falsely claiming that Donald Trump won the state of Michigan in 2020 have now been charged for their involvement in that fake elector scheme. Now, Biden, of course, won that state, and he won that state pretty handily by 150,000 votes. Now, the fake electors signed certificates wrongly claiming that then President Donald Trump had actually won the state, when of course that was not true, and they were ready to cast their electoral votes for Trump even though Biden won that state. Now, Nessel called the alleged plan a desperate effort to undermine democracy. And unfortunately, we find that several of the accused are active in Republican politics. So the individuals include Michigan Republican National Committee woman Kathy Burden. You also have former co-chair of the Michigan Republican Party, Meshawn Maddock. In fact, CNN had reported in early 2021 that Maddock, the co-chair of the Michigan Republican Party, was heard on an audio recording at a public event saying, quote, "We fought to seat the electors. The Trump campaign asked us to do that." So that will probably be relevant in the case against Donald Trump, the special counsel Jack Smith's case against Donald Trump. Now let's get to some more details about the 16 individuals who are charged with multiple felonies. The counts include 1 count of conspiracy to commit forgery, 2 counts of forgery, 1 count of conspiracy to commit uttering and publishing, and 1 count of uttering and publishing, all of which carry a maximum of 14 years in prison. I have to say the charge of uttering and publishing sounds hilarious to me, even though this is a very serious matter. Nonetheless, Cenk, what are your thoughts about all this?
First of all, I think uttering is a real problem. Okay, no,
we
seriously.
utter a lot here.
Yeah, we do. We're huge utterers. Okay, so guys, this is a super important story because if she succeeds, which she I think has an excellent chance of succeeding, it's going to set a precedent, and the precedent is very important. So if Donald Trump or someone like him wins the election again, and they try a stunt like this when they lose, then they go and say, okay, now we need a bunch of fake electors because we lost, and so then we're going to have the vice president this time. We're going to intimidate him enough that he pretends that he has the authority to overturn the whole election. So everybody signed the papers, and these guys are in jail. Then all of a sudden, electors in Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, et cetera, be like, well, the last guys who signed the papers that were fake are sitting in maximum security for 6 years, 12 years, 20 years, exactly, whatever it is. So they're gonna be a little bit more hesitant to sign fake papers. And so here, I love this in every way. I think this is one of the most important cases in all of the history of MAGA. Okay?
I totally agree, because look, I get that there is this partisan component to it, and some people are, there's a little bit of a ha-ha, but that's not what I care about here. No. What I care about here is whether this will prevent attempts to steal elections in the future. It is important to maintain our democratic process. And if this fake elector scheme had actually gone through, if it had worked, and Cenk actually did a really great job explaining how it could have worked easily, that would have been a disaster. And so if there aren't consequences moving forward to ensure that they don't try it again, they're gonna try it again, and it could work next time.
100%. So the reason I say it's a slam dunk is because their signatures are on piece of paper that are fraudulent. So what are they gonna do? I don't know how they're gonna get out of it. There's no question the papers are fraudulent, and there's no question they signed them. So which leads back to the Jack Smith case. So if these guys think that they're about to go to prison for a long time, which is definitely possible and actually even likely, a lot of them might flip, and Jack Smith has already flipped fake electors from other states. He's the special prosecutor going after Trump and is apparently going to indict him in a couple of days. So now that piles up into Trump's case, because then all of a sudden we've got all of these guys going, well, he told me to sign this fake document saying that he's the president when I knew he hadn't won, and we all knew he hadn't won. Well, then Trump could be in a lot of trouble. But even if they don't get Trump on it, sending these fake electors to prison would make a giant difference in terms of deterrence. But Nessel made a couple other great points that I wanted to share with you guys. She said, to Anna's point about, hey, is this political? She said, this is the most clear case of like forgery and handing in fake documents to a government that I've ever had. If I didn't prosecute it, it would be political. It would be a political choice not to prosecute an obvious crime. And she said, so I didn't really have a choice about prosecuting or not. If I didn't, I would be saying some people have special privileges. If they're officials, they're government officials, they're politicians, they get special privileges and they can break the law. I can't do that. I had to prosecute, and so we're going forward with the case. I think she's got a great case, and I think that those guys are in real trouble, and I'm thrilled about it. Do not try to do a coup in America. These are the real architects of the coup, not the rioters.
In a second, I'm gonna ask you to explain how the fake elector scheme could have very easily worked. Before I do though, I just wanna note that each one of those charges carries a potential 14 years in prison. So when Cenk says it's likely that some of them are gonna spend some time behind bars, I agree with that. And remember, these aren't former presidents, and these aren't high-level former political operatives. These are local Republican politicians who thought they could be cute and attempt to steal an election from an individual, Joe Biden, who won that state. But Cenk, so I didn't really believe the fake elector scheme could have worked until you explained to me fairly recently how easily it could have worked. So I think it's important to retell that so the audience understands.
Okay, so as quickly as I can. So the idea was tell Mike Pence not to certify the election. Now, the vice president doesn't have a choice. Republicans, you know that, because otherwise you'd have to say Kamala Harris has a choice to not certify the election even if Biden loses and just hand it over to Biden. That's crazy talk. But that's what they wanted to do because this is a coup. So they said, Pence, go pretend that you have the authority to not certify the election with the real electors. Then we're gonna say, well, I guess since we couldn't certify, we're gonna bring it back to the state legislatures. But the state legislatures are heavily gerrymandered and very Republican, even in purple states, even in these swing states. And those state legislatures got these fake electors ready. And the fake electors signed papers saying we are the real electors, even though they knew they weren't. And that's why they're being prosecuted now. If they had done that, you might still say, hey, Cenk, those are forgeries. They're not the real electors. But they come back and say, well, now we have a constitutional question. How are we going to resolve it? The minute you create that question, the method by which you resolve it is you go to the House of Representatives and they tell you who the president is going to be. But they don't vote based on the number of people in the House. They vote state by state. And Republicans have more states than Democrats do in the House, even under the old term of Congress. So that way, the Republicans at the state legislatures and then in the House just could say, Trump won. Or there was a dispute. There was mules. There was Krakens. There was a dispute and we won, okay? And that way, yes, that would have worked. And they would have stolen the election, and that would have been a coup. That is why prosecuting these guys is monumentally important as a precedent. And one last thing, this is where Trump's lack of strategy and lack of intelligence makes a giant difference. And his greed, his runaway greed makes a giant difference. If I was Trump, I would have been paying for these guys' defense to no end. He raised several $100 million for a legal defense fund. If those guys are pressured, they're gonna turn on you. If those guys are convicted, you can't pull another coup, right? So, but he's so greedy and so dumb, he hasn't helped them at all. And MAGA doesn't know to help them because all they care about is the cult of Trump. They're like, Trump, protect Trump. But if these guys go under, we save democracy anyway. So, look, it does, I can say it publicly, Trump's never gonna figure it out and he's never gonna give them any money and MAGA's never going to do a big defense of them because like Anna said, they're not at the very top They're not the elites. So if you're not at the elites, look at the rioters. They're all going to jail.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? If you're not the elites, you're screwed. And if you listen to a monster like Donald Trump, he's gonna get you in jail and he's not gonna ever help you. So I'm super happy that you guys made that monumental mistake. And now I hope you're gonna suffer the consequences for trying to undermine our democracy. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.